everyone, welcome back to the Crypto Windio YouTube channel. I've got a very, very special guest. For those of you that are on Twitter and that have been watching the recent drama on Twitter, I've got the CEO of FTX to kind of talk a little bit about himself, talk a little bit about the project, and kind of clear some things up. So how are you doing today, Sam?
Doing well. How are you?
I am good. And you guys, Sam, he is the CEO of FTX. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's find out a little bit about you, Sam. So as far as your professional background goes, what did you do before you got into crypto?
Yeah, so before crypto, I was at Jane Street doing quantitative trading of international ETFs. So they're basically US listed funds that hold foreign stocks. And so I was doing sort of quantitative trading, arbitrage, and OTC of those for about 3 years on Wall Street, and then left in 2017.
Okay, so you've got quite a bit of experience then in trading and markets and all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
All right. So what was your motivation? Well, first off, tell us what FTX is.
Yeah, so FTX is a cryptocurrency exchange, sort of specializing in derivatives. Right now it basically has perpetuals and quarterly futures on something like 20 different underlyings, including the top coins, some index futures, and it has some volatility products, some leverage tokens, it has some spot markets, and it has an OTC desk.
So you guys are pretty much like the most well-diversified margin trading platform in crypto currently, because you guys you can short and long all different cryptocurrencies, and you guys have your shitcoin index. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, in addition to having futures on, Bitcoin, ETH, BNB, EOS, Tron, things like that, we also have some index futures. Those are futures that track sort of a basket of underlying tokens, and one of them is, as you said, the shitcoin index. So this is an index of something like 100 tokens that have low but not extremely low market caps. I think it's like selected from numbers like 50 through 200 on CoinMarketCap, and it's basically the futures on this are a way to put on a sort of leveraged long or short position on a whole basket of low liquidity coins at once.
I think that's awesome because I love shitcoins. I love trading them. So I think it's really cool. I actually did a news story on you guys because I saw that on Twitter when you guys first launched, I saw that and I was like, this is awesome. It's really, really great marketing tactic because, we all call, anything that's not Bitcoin is a shitcoin.
Yep.
So I thought it was really, really cool. And, it was very, very interesting. It's fun because it makes it fun. Crypto is fun. It's about, financial freedom, but at the same time, community does a lot of memes and shit posting and whatnot. So thought it was good. So let's get into the juicy part of the interview. Yeah. So let's talk about, I was on Twitter and I saw some drama between Dudex and Dudex. If you guys don't know, Dudex is also another margin trading platform. There's been some drama behind, surrounding them. And I want you to just tell us the story. Tell us what happened, because I saw all these posts and I was like, what the heck? So I just kind of stood clear of everything I was watching and I reached out to you. I was like, I want to talk to Sam. I want him to tell me what's going on. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah. So, the basic answer is sort of looking into the Dudex platform. I look into most other cryptocurrency platforms for a number of reasons, and I saw that sort of Dudex was becoming more popular on Twitter, engaging with influencers a lot, and so I wanted to sort of educate myself on what the platform was like. So anyway, I sort of dug around it a bunch, and I don't know. I sort of a bunch of things became clear from doing so, and I ended up sort of posting a series of tweets where I summarized a lot of the findings I had, from investigating the platform. And I think some of the tweets are not super important. I mean, there's some typos in some places, but whatever. That doesn't really matter. I think there are a few meatier things as well. I think that one thing I saw was some pretty confusing volume numbers on their site, which, as it turns out, I think were, basically typos. They're sort of static numbers that we're supposed to be updating but weren't, which is, a bug which I think is probably going to be fixed soon. Another few things, it looks like there is someone probably paid a bunch of bots to like a lot of their Twitter posts. And then sort of the last thing, and maybe the meatiest, is that you know, a lot of the trades on the order book looked somewhat suspicious. They weren't the most suspicious. Like, there are some exchanges that just clearly have fake trades going on, and these were not sort of the provably fake, impossible type trades, but they were, I would say, you know, one or two steps away from that. And so, anyway, sort of, you know, noticed a bunch of things like that about the platform, and then sort of posted a series of tweets summarizing them.
Yeah, because I did notice one that kind of caught my eye was the Bybit one, because it looked like it was everything was copied and pasted directly from Bybit onto their, I want to say, the FAQ page.
Yeah, so I think that, and that's something other people have posted about as well. To be frank, that's not something that I care about as much. I mean, it's, you know, yeah, Dudex is sort of copying a lot of things about Bybit, but that's not shocking. I mean, most cryptocurrency exchanges sort of liberally, you know, take ideas from other ones. That's sort of how industries evolve usually. And, you know, if you want, you could say, look, a whole host of exchanges, FTX included, are using perpetual swaps, which are sort of an idea pioneered by BitMEX years ago. And so, you know, I think that, like, obviously it's a little bit embarrassing. Like, I think they copy pasted some help or explainers from Bybit and forgot to change the name Bybit to Dudex. But I also just think that, like, on the grand scheme of things, this is not that big of a deal. Like, okay. that one in particular, I think it's, you know, whatever. It's not great quality control on some written materials, but everyone fucks those up sometimes. And fundamentally, I mean, you know, everyone's copying everyone else to some extent in the, you know, crypto derivative space and sort of crypto exchange space more generally. And I think that that's, you know, it's one of the ways that the industry grows is by people learning from each other.
So one of the things you're talking about was the volume that they claim to have.
Yeah. So this one was, and I think this is something that has been mostly cleared up at this point. So they have, so sorry, for this you're referring, I'm guessing, to the total volume number, not to the question of whether the daily volume numbers are real or not. Yeah. So on their website, if you looked at the sort of contract description for their contract to the Bitcoin perpetual future, you know, there's a bunch of statistics that they named about it. One of them was the total volume. There's no more description other than total volume, but it was $11 billion, which is, I think, 20 times as much as Dudex has traded in its history. And there's also an open interest number of 18 million, which I think is also probably wrong. And so anyway, I sort of pointed out that, like, those, you know, the claimed total volume number was off by a factor of 20. From the actual total volume traded. I think the, you know, CEO has since commented on it, saying that basically this was an error in their webpage, that this was meant to be a live updating figure, but instead they basically put a placeholder number there. And I'm just going to look up right now because I can do it, whether this has been fixed at this point. And, you know, just to clarify, I think that, like, you know, this in particular is just not. I think this isn't great. I think it's, like, a bit worse than the other thing because, you know, because it is sort of making claims about the, you know, about the volume and sort of health of the platform, which are wrong. But it also seems to have been sort of an honest mistake. And, you know, it doesn't seem to be what you do if you're trying to sort of, like, really fake that number as well as possible.
Right.
And so, you know, I think, again, this is the sort of thing where it's a new platform. There are going to be errors, and, you know, presuming that they clean up things like this when they're pointed out, you know, I think that one I'm willing to chalk up to sort of an honest mistake of a growing platform and sort of, you know, mediocre quality control rather than, you know, sort of active attempt to be misleading. And I think that's, like, something that matters a lot here, is that, you know, you create a new platform, there are going to be typos in it. There's going to be things you haven't cleaned up yet. Like, that's sort of inevitable. And you know, I totally understand that. And I don't mean to, like, say that, you know, you have to have the best help docs in the world published before you can, you know, launch anything. But I think the big thing here is, like, you know, are these attempts to mislead people into thinking that the platform's something it's not, or is this just a typo that'll get fixed? And, you know, and yeah, I just think that there's, like, a pretty big difference between those two. I guess looking at the page right now, it looks like that line's just been entirely removed. So it looks like there's no longer a claim about open interest or about total volume on the web page.
Is that something that they should have on their web page though, as an exchange?
So open interest they definitely should have. I think it's not the most important piece of information. Like, you can trade without knowing the open interest, but I think it is something they should be releasing. The total volume ever, I think, is not a super important number. Like, you can calculate it yourself just by adding up all the daily volumes. It's not super standard. It's not the number most people look at when they're evaluating an exchange. So, I think what I'd say is, like, I definitely think that they should add back open interest once they have an accurate calculation for it. I think it's not great that they don't have it now. The total volume ever, I think it's not the most important number.
So do you think it's important, though, for an exchange, like if you're going to launch and you're going to do like a massive marketing campaign, don't you think that you should have all your ducks kind of in a row?
So I basically do think that. And I think that, like, why did I sort of point out some of these things that I think aren't that big of a deal? I think that there are sort of two parts to this. And one part of it is what you said, is that, Dudex sort of has been doing very, very aggressive marketing. And, it's not sort of coming out and saying, hey, here's a new platform, try it out, give us feedback. It's been sort of very aggressive on Twitter, recruiting a lot of people to pitch it. And I think that, like, the heavier you go on marketing a product, I think sort of the more you're putting yourself out there and you're saying, hey guys, this is a product ready to use. Like, this is not a beta mode. This is not like a first draft. Like, we're trying to go for all the users right now, and we think our platform's ready for that. And so I do think that means that, like, you should be held to a somewhat higher standard. And I think that sort of the accumulation of a lot of these issues, I think, means that, like, the platform's marketing got ahead of its product. And I think you can also see some of the liquidity on the exchange, which is, it's not terrible, but it's not good. Mm-hmm. And it's not, I think it's not ready for large volume traders. It's not going to survive large orders. It's got pretty small volume right now, and I think the order book's enough for that, but it's not enough to grow much. So I do think that there's a little bit of putting the cart before the horse here. I totally understand the position they're in. On the other hand, like, in a competitive industry, you don't want to sit there for years refining your help articles before you can launch and get passed by. So, I understand the business decision there. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I do think that, like, the platform could use a fair bit of cleanup in a lot of ways. Now, this is sort of not addressing what I think is probably the most serious of the issues that I found with it. This is sort of addressing the middle tier of, like, things that are not great, but that are not that bad, all things considered.
Okay. What is the most severe issue, you think, in your opinion?
Yeah. So of all of these, I think there's sort of one that stands out, maybe two. One, I mean, buying Twitter likes and retweets it's not a great look. Again, I don't think this is a huge deal, but it's just, like, really not an accident. Like, as opposed to a lot of these other things, which are just, like, poor quality control, like, you don't accidentally pay someone to recruit a lot of bots to like and retweet all of your posts. And so I think that, now, of course, I don't have proof that it's Dudex themselves that did this. It is possible that some third party did this. It'd be a little weird, but it's possible. But I mean, it's pretty fucking transparent here that these are all bots.
Right.
So that's something which, again, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, it's not like fake Twitter likes are really costing people that much. That much. It's more just, like, I think, more clearly intentional. But I think the biggest thing is whether the volume is real.
Okay.
And I think that's, like, obviously this has been sort of a hobby horse of mine for a while, is looking at which exchanges in crypto have real volume, which have fake volume. And I think that's a pretty serious thing. I mean, everyone knows that the volume numbers you publish are, one of the primary things that people are going to use to judge your product. And that it's how traders decide if it's an active platform, if it's a platform that has liquidity that can support large volume, that other people have decided they should, trade on. And so I think that's a sort of thing where that's, faking volume, I think, is both extremely intentional and like really misleading and sort of really misleading towards customers. Now, on that, a thing I will say is it was not the most clear-cut case in the world. We've seen a lot of exchanges that have just completely blatantly faked volume. These are exchanges that just have an order book that's 1% wide and print a ton of trades at mid at an impossible price for 10 times the size on the order book, and just, like, physically can't happen. And it's just completely unambiguous that all their volume is fake. And this was not that. And I also haven't done a deep dive on this. Like, it's possible that I would come out with a different impression if I looked into it more. But the thing that I saw was a bit suspicious, maybe more than a bit suspicious. What it was basically was some of the trades looked normal, but a lot of the trades looked like basically someone would penny the offer and then like a millisecond later, someone else would lift that offer. And that would just like happen every second.
Could that be bots though, maybe?
Well, right. So it could be bots, and they weren't physically impossible trades. So it can't rule out that it was organic behavior. But it's not like you very, very rarely see that organically. Like organically, you would almost see if it was just a bot taking, they'd just be lifting the offer. They wouldn't be waiting for someone to penny the offer and then lifting that. But now, of course, you can tell the story. Well, no, it's that there's an offer at 83. The bot didn't want to buy at 83, and then someone kept offering 82 halves, and then it would buy. So he's willing to buy at 82 half and not at 83. So far, that story sort of holds up as plausible. But then I tried something else, which is I pennied the offer. So I placed an offer at 82 half, a small offer. And no one lifted my offer. The bot that was taking stop lifting at 82 half as soon as it was me on that offer. And then someone started placing an 82 offer, and the bot kept lifting that. And so that sort of really cut a hole in the theory of like, what's going on here is there's just one participant who's willing to sell at 82 half and another who's willing to buy there, but neither are willing to budge from that. And that's why it's not actually actually printing on the offer. Because if that were the case, the person who's buying shouldn't care whether it's me or this other bot that keeps pennying who they're buying from. They should be fine either way. So again, this isn't a proof of anything. Like it's, I can't see behind the scenes, obviously. I don't know which accounts are doing this, but it's really weird behavior. It's pretty hard to explain as organic behavior. And there's a pretty natural explanation for it, which I think is pretty compelling, which is that someone wanted there to be a lot of trades going up, but only wanted to trade with themselves, didn't want to trade with some other party. In order for that to make sense, given that there are fees, it had to be someone who is also collecting the fees, which means an internal trading desk. And that also fits with like the sort of motivation here, which is to increase the reported volume of the exchange. And it was, done in a more sophisticated way than typical fake volume is, but not that much more sophisticated. So again, this isn't a proof of anything, but I think it's like pretty suspicious. And I think like would certainly lead me to believe that the odds were fairly high that this was, likely to be an internal trading desk, self-trading to fake volume in order to make the exchange seem more active than it was. And I think that's sort of the most serious thing that I noticed of all of these.
Because they're claiming that they don't have like the internal trading desk.
That's right. They've claimed that very publicly. And again, this is one of these things where like, in sort of pointing that out, my point wasn't so much to say, to comment on whether it's good or bad to have an internal trading desk as to say like, they're making a big deal of not having one. This is like one of their big selling points. But I think there's like reasonably strong evidence that they probably do. And again, this isn't proof. Like this could be someone else doing it. I can't imagine why they'd be doing it, but it could be them. Similarly, you look at the liquidity on the books, it's super consistent what the pattern is. Like it doesn't look like just a bunch of random market participants sort of running into each other in random ways. It looks like there's exactly one desk that's providing all the liquidity here. And that's also something that like, sort of points towards this. And again, I think more what I'm pointing out here is a little bit of hypocrisy, a little bit of like, if you're gonna make a big media push of this is gonna be one of your big selling points all over Twitter, it's not a good look if that's not true. Which again, I don't have proof of, but that's certainly what it looks like.
Do you guys have an internal trading desk?
So it's a really good question, and the answer there is it depends on what you mean by that. Like technically the answer is no, there's no FTX internal trading desk. There's no, FTX as an entity doesn't do this. But, as is extremely public, like Alameda Research does trade on FTX. Okay. Alameda Research is one of the primary liquidity providers there. And obviously FTX is sort of an organization that spun out of Alameda Research. And so I think I'd call it like, a sort of, closely related or affiliated or something like that trading desk. And I think that, the nuance there, I think it's worth something, but like, I think for a lot of intents, a lot of intents and purposes here, the effective answer is, there's a core liquidity provider here that has a relationship, to the exchange. So, and I would never like make a big deal of like, oh yeah, definitely that's one of the big selling points of FTX, like no related trading desks. I think that would be a pretty misleading thing.
Do you have control over Alameda? Like if they do have their internal trading desks like on FTX, do you have control over that, or that's like something that exchanges don't have control over with the internal trading desk?
So what you mean have control over?
Well, because Dudex is claiming we don't have this internal trading desk that's screwing with our volume, and then you're saying that your guys are partnered kind of with Alameda, and they may have that. So, like, because FTX and Alameda are two separate entities.
I understand what you're saying. So, so let me say sort of a few things on that. And obviously, there's a lot of sort of tangled things here, and so I'm not sure I'm going to answer all of the questions. But one thing to say is like Alameda does pay fees on FTX. They don't have any special fee deals. They're just going with the typical fee schedule. And Alameda would pay fees. Also, things like wash trading are just banned by the matching engine on FTX. It just doesn't let an account trade with itself. And obviously we monitor pretty closely to make sure there isn't any attempts to inflate volume, that trades are done for sort of legitimate purposes. And at the very least, that if not, like people are paying fees on that. And I think that sort of gets one of the big things too here, which is like one of the big worries is you have an entity that's not paying any fees, which is probably the exchange itself. And so there's no disincentive to wash trade, and it pumps up the volume. So yeah, I mean, you can also just like take a look at the trades and see that like the trades that are done on FTX are against resting orders, and typically against resting orders that had been there for more than like a millisecond or whatever. And so anyone could have traded against that order. If you place an order there instead, like you'll get filled as well. It's not there's no trading desk on FTX that is like specifically has the ability or motivation to target trading against themselves or a particular counterparty.
Okay, so you guys don't have an internal trading desk.
That's right. For the purposes of this, that's correct. Again, I want to be a little bit careful about this, because someone could say, yeah, well, okay, but you have Alameda and it is
two separate entities.
But they are two separate entities. That's right. And Alameda is it's just acting as a liquidity provider there, and it's not doing any sort of like wash trading or volume pumping or some things like that.
And exchanges do have liquidity providers. They have makers and takers and all different type of stuff, because it kind of helps with volume and liquidity. It's pretty standard procedure for all exchanges, correct?
That's right. I mean, all exchanges obviously try really hard to have liquidity providers. With some, the liquidity providers have a closer relationship to the exchanges than others. For some, it's a long process to get a lot. Obviously one of the things about FTX and one of the big things about starting a new exchange in general, which makes it tricky, is it's really hard to convince liquidity providers to provide liquidity on an exchange if there's no volume, but it's really hard to get volume if you don't have any liquidity.
It's hard to get users if you don't have liquidity.
Exactly. And so there's this chicken and the egg problem that's hard to solve. And obviously having Alameda there from day one trying liquidity on FTX was, one of the things that helped get it off the ground.
Okay, so I've got some other questions. So today on Twitter, somebody posted a chart, and I want to say it was an FTX chart, where the price skyrocketed to 10K. So can you talk about that at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what happened there, first of all, sorry about that. So this was the spot Bitcoin USD market on FTX. Basically, as bots were refreshing, the order book cleared out for a second, and then Bitcoin printed at $10,000. Okay. So on the one hand, there's no liquidations based on the spot markets, and we have lots of protections on all of the markets that can trigger liquidations against large prints, including price bands and things like that. But there were obviously, stop losses, for instance, can trigger based on this price on that market.
Okay.
It's not good. So FTX has compensated all users who got filled at a bad price there. And we did that a few hours ago, once we'd looked into what happened, and also have taken steps to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future. I think that we'd put substantially less effort into preventing large prints on the spot markets than the futures markets, because of the lack of liquidations. But obviously, given that stop losses are order types that exist, you still have things triggering based on the price, and so it's still not great.
But you guys saw that was an issue. You guys compensated everybody.
That's right. Anyone who got filled above what market, and it is pretty clear. And it's not like there is a ton of prints in a continuous lineup. There's like about spot 8 Bitcoins or something like that total that printed $1,000 above fair, and all of those trade prices have been adjusted to what the actual market price was before anything went crazy.
Okay, so my next question is, there was a lawsuit that came out, and I can't remember if it was against FTX or if it was against Alameda. Right. Can you speak about that at all?
Yep. So the first thing that I will say is, the amount that I sort of allowed to say about this publicly is obviously somewhat constrained, but
of course.
And there is a blog post that sort of Alameda wrote on this. And largely what I'm going to be doing is just sort of like repeating that, but
that's fine.
But from a high level, basically, like, the alleged trading behavior is not something that Alameda does. It's full of false claims. There's sort of no teeth behind it. It's just accusing Alameda of things it didn't do. One of the only kind of real core pieces of evidence cited was a twice retracted tweet on the matter, stemming from misunderstanding, it's just like, unfortunately, it's the case that it's like super easy to file a lawsuit in the U.S.
Yes, it is.
You can basically just do it, we don't see it as having merit. And I'll maybe address one other specific part of it, which is the part that touched FTX, which is that FTX and FTT are not offered in the United States, and so the website blocks IP blocks the United States. Non-US KYC is required in order to access FTT, and so that's sort of the other thing, and that's sort of where the the claims intersected with FTX.
So you guys are going to be Alameda is going to be fighting that, not because FTX, you guys are like, that has nothing to do with us,
Right, and obviously can't give details on this, but yeah, we like basically think it's sort of a nonsense suit and are going to be fighting it.
Okay, so basically people that are in the United States are not supposed to be trading on your guys' platform anyways, correct?
That is absolutely correct. Not supposed to, not allowed to, IP blocked, KYC blocked. That's obviously a thing that a lot of cryptocurrency exchanges are doing right now, given the regulatory landscapes in the United States.
All right. Anything else you want to add before we get going? Because I think you did a really great job of kind of clearing things up, clearing up why you were on the Dudex website, what you were looking for, because it is very normal for competitors to kind of, look at each other and say, okay, what can we do better? How can we beat the competition? It creates, it creates healthy competition, and that's what we want in crypto. We want to have the best of the best, and we want to be taken seriously by the masses. So that's, to me, that makes sense that you kind of went ahead and did that, and that you posted that tweet and whatnot. And, there's still some salt going on Twitter.
Yep. And I totally agree. Like, competition is good here. And, we've obviously taken ideas from other exchanges. Other exchanges have taken ideas from us. I don't begrudge them that's legit. Like, obviously if take an idea means call yourself FTX, that's not okay. But if take an idea is, a lot of exchanges now think doing a trading competition is a good idea, that, go for it. I guess the one last thing I will say is that, obviously there's some sort of harsh words exchanged between some parties, but I will say that both the Dudex CEOs, posts on the thread I thought were totally respectful and reasonable. I didn't take issue with them at all. I appreciate that he sort of owned up to some of them. I think he sort of dodged some of the maybe more biting bullet points, which I'm not at all surprised by, but they put him in a tough position, and I'm guessing he's looking into those internally. So, I have no beef at all with how he handled it. And I've never met him. I have nothing against him, and hope that, that a lot of these things are cleaned up, and sort of wish him the best.
Okay. Yeah, I met him in Vegas. He was a cool guy. So it was,
Yep.
meet a lot. You meet a lot of people at these conferences and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So they're fun. But anyways, I appreciate you, Sam, you taking the time to come on and kind of talk about what happened and explained it to people. And if you guys are interested and you want to learn more about FTX, Sam is also on Twitter. I'm going to tag him in this. I'm sure you can go ask him questions. You can pop in their Telegram group and whatnot. So before we get going, anything that people can expect from FTX in the future that you want to talk about and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess what do we have sort of on the docket here? I think we're probably going to be launching more volatility contracts too. There's sort of option-like contracts, which are called move contracts. So expect some more of those longer dated ones coming out soon. Expect some pretty cool trading algorithm features in the next month or two, and a bunch of other potentially cool shit that I can't that I don't want to quite reveal yet because it's not certain, not over the finish line, but we've got a lot of exciting things in store.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and kind of talking about all the stuff that happened and kind of explaining it in your own words. I appreciate that. I try to get the scoop for anybody that's watching. I always try to get the scoop before it happens or, after it happens and kind of get, people to kind of clarify on what's going on. I think this was an important conversation for people that do margin trade and do use both platforms or do, currently want to maybe switch from one to the other. So I appreciate you coming on and it was great talking.
It's great being on here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.